George Bush Sr. got on TV and announced to the world, he doesn't, not even bother talking to Saddam Hussein, right? He announces to the world that all Iraq has to do to get back into the community of nations, because he doesn't know the meaning of the word nation, get back in the community of nations, is to give up its weapons of mass destruction. Now everybody knew what they meant, what Senior meant was that he had to give up the chemical weapons that the US had supplied Iraq. And so Saddam Hussein did. He took all the chemical weapons and he put them in the desert. He had the army take them out in the desert, different locations, and blew them up. In the act of, in August, he blew them up.
Are these the weapons that we sold for 4 times as much?
No, we didn't. Those were the weapons to Iran. We actually sold those for market value to Iraq. He takes them out in the desert and blows them up. In August of 1991, he blows up all of it as far as we know. 100%. Well, the UN weapons inspection regime shows up shortly afterwards, and really early on, one of the guy who ends up in charge of it is a guy named Scott Ritter, who had been a Marine, a US Marine. He's a self-proclaimed conservative Republican. He goes to the Iraqis and goes, okay, show me your weapons of mass destruction. Well, first of all, chemical weapons are not weapons of mass destruction. That's wrong. Biological and nuclear weapons are weapons of mass destruction. Chemical weapons are more of a combat terror weapon because they're really scary, because they do horrible things like burn your lungs, right? But they don't necessarily kill in large numbers any more than conventional weapons do. You can drop conventional bombs on a city and smash it into the Stone Ages, and in many ways it's more efficient and easier than dropping chemical weapons, in part because chemical weapons, they could get blown away by the wind, air conditions matter, if you have, the pressure in the atmosphere can change the effectiveness of the chemical weapons. Having said that, the Iraqis go, we don't have any chemical weapons. Scott Ritter goes, no, I know you have chemical weapons. He then shows them the receipts. Right? We kept our copy, the merchant copy of the receipts. Here, even had the serial number for every. How do you think we had the serial numbers? That's because we're the ones who sold them, those rockets. You had VX, you had Sarin, right? It shows them, here, look. All right. The Iraqis go, yeah, we had them, but you said we had to get rid of them. We did. We blew them up. He goes, you blew them up? Yeah, we didn't think you wanted anybody to find out who was giving us the chemical weapons. So we thought we were helping you by getting rid of the evidence. So he's like, all right, show me where the weapons were. So they take them out into the desert, and they set up sifters. And they sift through the sand, and they're looking for the serial numbers. From 1992 to 98, that's the primary task of the UN weapons inspection regime, is to go into the desert and sift the sand looking for the serial numbers for the rockets. In that 6 years, Scott Ritter found 98%. In fact, he was ready in 1998 to give Iraq the clean bill of health. He was ready to say, done. You're 98%. There's 2% floating out there. You're not a threat to us. In fact, even the 2% wouldn't have been a threat to anybody, not even Iraq's neighbors. Not a threat to the United States. They didn't have the capacity to launch them to us. They didn't have intercontinental ballistic missiles. They had short-range missiles. They could get them to Israel, maybe. They could get them to Lebanon. They could get them to Turkey or Saudi Arabia or Iran. But that was about as far as they could go. The problem is, those chemical weapons had a shelf life of 7 years. The last time we delivered them to Iraq was 88 and 89. That would be 95, 96. In 98, those chemical weapons were 2 years past their shelf life. I'm sure they still had some deadly effect. I'm sure it wasn't that they just suddenly turned them completely inert. It was like, whoop, you got to throw them away. But they're not full potency. So they're not a threat for all intents and purposes anymore. And most likely, the Iraqis blew them up, but when they got blown up, the serial numbers got lost, and no amount of sifting was ever going to retrieve those serial numbers. So at that point, it was probably 100%. Right before he's ready to give the clean bill of health, before Scott Ritter's ready to do this, there was, I think, one more location they needed to inspect. Bill Clinton orders him out. He goes, no, I've got one location left, and I'm done with my job. Let me go investigate it. Bill Clinton says, I'm ordering Iraq because I'm going to bomb Iraq. Why are you bombing Iraq? You ready? Iraqi radar turned on for a U.S. fighter jet flying over Iraq. I don't even think it locked on. I think it just turned on. So they picked up the radar blip. And so now Iraq is going to be bombed as punishment for turning on their radar. Scott Ritter is like, wait, what? They turned on the radar so they get bombed? I'm so close to finishing. I've just spent 6 years of my life. Let me finish this thing. And Clinton goes, get out, and then bombs Iraq. The U.S. News reported on the press that lies to you on a regular basis, on every issue, reported Saddam Hussein throws out UN weapons inspection regime. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Bill Clinton ordered the weapons inspection regime out. Now here's the weird thing. So you ask yourself, why? Why not let them complete the process? Every time something went wrong in the U.S., we would bomb Iraq. I think that Bill Clinton realized that Iraq was a really useful tool. He could distract the U.S. with a bombing of Iraq every time something went wrong, like his penis ended up in the wrong mouth or something. He just